You know what's so tragic about Europe? I see Europe going in the same direction in terms of their foreign policy, going to the same direction as Israel went. Israel
Yes,
has nobody but the United States. And those countries who have some sort of relationship with Israel is because of the United States.
exactly.
And and Europe is going in that direction, Pepe. You don't see they don't have independent foreign policy. I don't know how long does it take, because if they become fully dependent on the United States, that would, the moment would come to the public opinion in the United. Why do we need to support Europe? Because if Europe become dependent in terms of energy, oil, gas, and they're not gonna be able to afford it because of the price of the US. So after all, it's gonna be liability for the United States. That's gonna change that the same position that Israel is in right now. I don't know if they see the sort of threat they're bringing to themselves.
No, they don't, Nima. The short answer to your question, they don't. First of all, because their own inner mediocrity. The fact that most of them, their popularity rates are beyond appalling, and they know that they have to stick to something, otherwise they are going to be brought down. And we could even get to a pitchfork scenario, or having Madame Guillotine have a conversation with many of them, if not all of them. The exceptions are, of course, some Eastern Europeans who are on the margins. Like in the case of Hungary, not exactly on the margins. Hungary is probably the number one opponent of Brussels stupidity. And at least Orban says that openly. And everybody knows it in Western Europe, in Eastern Europe, and beyond. Slovakia as well. Some movements by Austria as well. So there is opposition against Brussels Kafkaesque stupidity, let's put it this way. But nothing will change the course that they set years ago, if not decades ago. When we look at those harpies at the head of the European Commission, and when we look especially at that stupid Dutchman, Stale Good, as the Secretary General of NATO, when you put these all together, not only their stupidity, but their total misreading of the current geopolitical situation in Europe, in the West, and around the world. And on top of it, the vassalization process. Everything is happening as Europe is being vassalized to a point of no return by the Americans. And the Trump 2.0 leadership, let's put it this way, plus the absolute majority of Republicans, they despise Europe as allies and as vassals. They have less than zero importance on anything. They are not even allowed to sit at the dog's table right beside the big banquet where the real powers sit. And they brought this on themselves. And obviously, because they brought them on themselves, they have no self-critical instincts to analyze what they did to themselves. It's impossible, absolutely impossible. So we are watching them being more and more ostracized by the global South, Israeli style, as you mentioned, correct. Uh, the only thing that they have is to ramp up the rhetoric and, of course, those threats with what they don't have, like manpower, capable armies, enough weapons, even if bought from the US, considering what the US will be interested in selling them, even if it's paid by euro, overvalued euros, by the way. And of course, threats against Russia, Iran, and on and off China nonstop. That's everything that they had. And of course, even worse, pure theft. Today is Wednesday, right, Nima? Guess what's going to be decided tomorrow in Brussels? If they're actually going to dare to steal, literally steal, at least 140 billion euros of Russian assets and find some legal maneuvering to transfer their own terminology. These funds for use their own terminology by those Kiev gangsters. Well, if that happens, bye-bye to anybody investing in the European Union, and bye-bye to any credibility of the euro and the European Union at large. So let's see what's going to happen tomorrow in Brussels. Tomorrow is a very, very important landmark. Let's see. There are some people, there are some economists around Europe who are saying, look, you better think 10 times before you do that, because then we are all screwed. So let's see. But don't forget, this is not a geoeconomic or geopolitical decision. It's a narrow political decision by these absolutely disgusting so-called leaders of the European Union, which have more power than the nation states that compose the European Union. So the situation is really, really bleak. And there's no way out, Nima. It's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Pepe, how do you see the other side? How do you see the side of these Atlanticists in Iran and Russia? What is their position as time goes by?
It depends on the issue, Nima. That's a very complex discussion. For instance, I was reading today something that was published in a very serious portal, in English, Russian, German as well, debunking some people who are posing as Russian experts who seem to know exactly what goes on in the real corridors of power in Russia. The analysis is essentially correct, because nobody, especially us, foreign analysts, reporters, correspondents, etc., even spending a lot of time in Russia, we really don't know. Nobody really knows. And in my personal case, that in this past 3 years, I spent a lot of time in Russia, and I made some very good connections, and I was received with open arms, because I was one of the very few foreigners who actually decided to actually go to Russia and spend a lot of time in Russia and talk to everybody and understand the Russian point of view on several levels. Our access and the information that we have access to has a limit. And obviously, the best we can aspire to is to have people who work closely with the intel apparatus, with the agencies, or worked before, or have very good contacts, or even think tanks. But there's a limit. The ones who really know what's really going on are Vladimir Putin and the Security Council. Nobody else. And of course, Gerasimov. Gerasimov has to know, for obvious reasons, Minister of Defense. And that's it. There's a lot of stuff that not even the Minister of Foreign Relations in Russia knows. So this is so you cannot pose as a Russian expert anywhere, wherever you come from. And it doesn't matter how much time you spend over there. You're always learning. From my point of view, I keep myself in Russia in the position of a non-stop full-time student. I'm always learning. And I'm always learning about especially subtleties of the Russian way of thinking and making decisions and planning long-term. For instance, you cannot but admire how they are planning the development of their Far East, of Siberia and the Russian Far East. This is something that you see every year in the Vladivostok forums, essentially. So you learn to understand and to praise Russian long-term planning, Chinese style. In the case of the SMO, it's much more complicated, because there is a spectrum of opinions about how the SMO should be conducted. And if you go to a very nice dinner in Moscow and you have 4 or 5 people on the table, they will all have divergent analysis of how the SMO was organized and should proceed from now on. And these are very well informed, educated, and connected people, So there's no monopoly of how Putin is going to end the SMO. Okay, look, it's on public record from Putin and from everybody else at the top of the government. Demilitarization means demilitarization of Ukraine and NATO. So as soon as Putin and the Security Council are sure that they did 90% of the job, approaching 100%, that's it. From their point of view, that will be the end of the SMO. It's going to take a long time. And denazification, it's a matter of generations. You cannot then denazify Ukraine in 1 or 2 years. It will take 2 generations at least. That's a long-term process. So, and now when they are facing, once again, Narcissus drowning in his own swamp every day, infatuated with his image and changing his point of view every 5 seconds, or one news cycle to another. I'm going to organize a meeting with Putin in Hungary. I already called Orban. Everything is going to be all right. And then a few days later, I don't want to waste my time. How can you trust a political leader like this? There's no strategy. There's nothing. It's just this non-stop circus that monopolizes the news cycle, non-stop, monopolizes our attention, independent analysts, non-stop. And nobody can make sense of it because there is no sense in it. Because nobody else makes decisions in Washington, D.C. It's only the big Narcissus. It's only the circus ringmaster. And everybody has to, yes, master. He qualified himself as ruler of the world, the king of whatever. And it's not in jest. He actually believes that he's the king of the world. This is not a joke. In his mind, he is the king of the world. He decides everything. And he is entitled to change his mind all the time, because after all, he's the president of the most important power in the history of humanity. How can you possibly have... It's hard to, of course, considering what is leaked from both sides when Putin and Trump talk on the phone. What is really leaked is, I would say, 10 or 15, 20% of what they actually discuss. I can imagine the silences in between. And I can imagine Putin trying to explain some basic lessons of history to Trump over the phone, which is something practically impossible. Nobody can do that. Or at least some basic facts of life. Like, all right, you're going to authorize Tomahawks to launch against us. So this is how we're going to respond. Putin can say that in 30 seconds in a very understandable manner as well. And then Trump, okay, he absorbs that for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, but then half an hour later, he changes his mind. So, there's no continuity, there's no organization, there is not a real National Security Council properly advising the president, because those members are most absolute idiots. We have a real state mogul posing as a Bismarck. Come on, it's a circus. It's a circus. So once again, you have to praise Russian patience, Putin's own patience, and the patience of the Security Council around him, which is not necessarily the patience of the FSB or the SVR. You see, the latest public appearances of Narishkin and Bortnikov, that they are really, really fed up with all that. I can imagine if Narishkin or Bortnikov were the president of the Russian Federation. We will not be where we are now. It will be infinitely more heavy metal than where we are now. But that's it, that's Putin. And then Putin is accused of, now he's going to give even more territory to Ukraine than a few months ago. No, this is a negotiation process. These idiots don't understand the Russian way of negotiating. And of course, Putin can destabilize Trump completely when he says, look, of course I want to make a deal. But to make a deal, you have to listen to my priorities. If you don't listen to my priorities, there's no deal, because it's going to be your deal. And your deal is not my deal. A deal is between both of us. Try to explain that to Trump, Nima, over the phone.
Impossible.
Impossible.
Pepe, the main issue, it seems, as they talk about it, is an immediate ceasefire, which is not acceptable for Russians.
No.
And
Lavrov already said no way. And this is the polite response. No?
Yeah. And the key for that, I think, what you've mentioned, demilitarization and denazification. But you cannot demilitarize Ukraine without demilitarizing NATO in that region.
Exactly.
This is the key there. And
Absolutely.
what they fail to understand, in my opinion, is that China would be more than happy with that concept. Iran would be more than happy with that concept. Look at the war between Iran and Israel. You had NATO interfering in favor of Israel. If they go to Taiwan, they're going to be NATO against, China. That's
NATO as support to the US. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Support, because it's all NATO.
Yes, exactly. It's all NATO.
2 to 5% goes to the United States. It's not going to the pocket of military industrial complex of Europe. They don't have that in Europe.
They don't have anything. Well, they're trying. Leonardo and Thales, they say that they're going to, boost the non-existent, by the way, European industrial military complex. Well, these are two serious companies, at least, but they don't have what it takes to build from scratch and something from scratch. And basically, the real participants of this new Euro-wide industrial military complex would be maximum 4 nations, maybe 5. That's it. Can you imagine Estonia being part of the Latvia being part of the industrial military complex? That's a joke.
With what Medvedev said, the latest comment of Medvedev, he's talking about that if any of the numerous commentators still had illusions, here you go. The United States is our enemy, and their sort of policy toward us is nothing but they see us as their enemy. What is that, Andrei? What is, because he was talking about the cancellation of the summit in Budapest, and it seems that the Russian part, they know that the atmosphere of the talks is not prepared for those sort of meetings. That's why they have decided to just to have the phone calls between the two before going there. Your take on that?
Oh, very simple. I mean, my take on that is from December 2021. It has been published by Russian Foreign Ministry. It was called Ultimatum, but many people still didn't understand then that the conditions were set forth. They actually changed, because now Russia not only is sitting back on its, not sitting back, it's literally sitting on the initial peremptory, as they were, discussed, ultimatum, what have you. But now there are consequences of combined West getting engaged in full-blown capacity against Russia, ended up with its defeat. And Trump, it's like poker, you have Flash Royale or whatever. That's what Putin has, and Trump has whatever, 2s, 4th, whatever, no Trump cards. So if he wants to play this hand, Russians see no reason to play it. And Russians are not naive people, as many people portray them to be. But then again, most of those people who portray them to be like that are people who never commanded anything in their life. And so the question here is Medvedev is alter ego of Putin. It's really, let's face it, it's a good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
Okay, simple as that. And United States and the combined West primarily has to be praying that Medvedev doesn't become next president, which is actually pretty high probability of that happening. And many people believe that it's some kind of the play by Medvedev, populist play to get elected once the term comes. No, that's how he thinks. And it was told, and don't forget, it's not just Medvedev. Today, Vladimir Putin came out and used for the first time the term which many in Europe, especially, have to really shake from in quake in their boots when he stated their response will be decisive and shocking. So, what can I say? Russians know where the game, so to speak, moves towards. And Trump, as I already stated, Russia gave him off-ramp. Trump is not a politician, or he's not statesman. He is politician, and not a very good one. So his game is up, and he can continue to do whatever he wants to do. But you know what? The next strike will be obviously at the NATO facilities if something bad happens, So, and Russia issued the warning.
The main issue, Andrei, with the Trump administration is they're not consistent in their way of thinking and their way of communicating with Russians. When it comes to the immediate ceasefire that they're talking about, it is the main issue before going to meeting between the two presidents. Is there any chance that Russia would accept an immediate ceasefire, in your opinion?
No, I mean, it's just out of the question. And while we speak, actually, Russians are now launching the operation of the liberation of Kherson. It's just for those people who do not know. And when you look at the dynamics on the front on the last couple of months, again, listen, for people who grew up on the movie pattern, okay, and the Hollywood view of war, for them it's difficult to understand how real war is fought. And Russians daily annihilate 1,500, about give and take, of the armed forces of Ukraine personnel, and they will continue to do it until Ukraine either surrenders and then follows what Russians tell them, or until they will run out of men. I know it sounds horrible, but Russia has all resources to continue this as long as necessary. And so the question is, for example, now they are, it's going to be obviously presented again as some kind of the tactical maneuver, But Pokrovsk, which is actually a Krasnoarmeysk original name of it, is they are running out of it now, like rats, up to the groups of 10 men. Obviously, they use civilians as their human shield. This is NATO tactics, basically. So, and yeah, Pokrovsk is, if you take a look attentively at the map of Pokrovsk today, most of it is liberated. They are concentrating primarily in the western part of it, and they're running. And actually, they're interesting point. In the last months, the trend is very pronounced. The armed forces of Ukraine simply try to avoid any kind of the combat contact, because that's how they demoralized, and unless of course they're drugged and then pushed towards suicidal raids, so-called counterattacks, where they get all killed or wounded, and that's pretty much equates to killed. And so in this case, the situation on the line of combat contact defines everything in the international relations today. Some movement by some Russian brigade or some air wing of Russian Air Force, it has more bearing on the international politics than, for example, any collection of the NATO generals trying to, gather and pretend that they know what real war is. They don't. And so, as the result, we have what we have. Russia, you cannot change anything in the Russian position. It's completely idiotic when you have people even in the West, ranging from Mr. Orban to Steve Bannon to other former, even big honchos in State Department of all places, going in the Sky News and saying the war is lost, it's over. Yeah, we know it's over. It's just that how much those war criminals in Brussels, London, Paris, and Washington want to persist. And the only thing which depends on them is how many more Ukrainian men will be slaughtered. That's it. And the question is, again, many people still don't understand. Russians don't need those territories, but they are very deep into the Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk, Sumy Oblast, and so Kherson is being liberated. The operation started already. So I don't know what the United States can bring on the table today. And there was another thing, which many people, again, behind all this white noise, behind all this, sell the story, there are a bunch of the one-cell organisms from media, because no complex life forms work in the, especially US and Western media. They forget that, for example, Mr. Ryabkov made an astonishing announcement yesterday. And when Mr. Ryabkov says anything, they better listen. He stated that Russia is not going to be sharing any information in terms of the weapons and issues related to the possible New START treaty. Russia gave United States until 2026, which, by the way, very soon expires. After that, there will be no negotiations about any new START treaty whatsoever, and Russia will stop abiding by it and will continue to produce things which many people do not even understand the significance of it. And these are strategic systems, delivery systems, which already change the balance of power dramatically in the world. They will change the balance of power towards Russia, in favor of Russia, that it's not going to be even fair. And to the United States, forget about Europe. Europe militarily is insignificant. And when we talk about it, people say, oh, yeah, Trump says this, he said, you know what? It's like he loves me not thing, like one day he wants to meet, then the other day he doesn't. He is utterly incompetent man. He tries to survive because his domestic policies are failing dramatically. And what can I say? But this is what is happening on the background, which is more important than actually tactical and operational movements on the line of the combat contact, because we know what is happening there. We know how it is already ended. We just need to know how it's going to be arranged in terms of the final, so to speak, thing. Because it's not only that many of the Nazis from Ukraine have to go behind bars. There are many political leaders in the West who are genocidal maniacs and downright war criminals and criminals against humanity. Simple as that. And they have to be brought to justice.
As you've mentioned, Sergei Ryabkov, he said that the calls for nuclear disarmament that ignores today's military and political realities are completely unrealistic. You cannot go forward with these sort of policies in Ukraine. In any area.
It's unsustainable. United States, as a superpower, as it thought about itself before, is unsustainable. And it will have to cut its appetites by a gigantic margin. Many people talk about it, that, yeah, it has to concentrate primarily. And many people, okay, let me put it this way. The United States is more than just West. United States is its own civilization, okay, which incorporates many things which are dramatically different from Europe. In fact, is Americans as people, they differ quite significantly from Europeans. It doesn't mean that there are no commonalities. Of course, there are commonalities. And of course, United States was the combined West, which is, of course, Europe, final hope. United States failed miserably as such. And it's now time for United States to, turn inward and try to sort out what is happening in the country. Trump is incapable of doing this. He is cowardly man, actually, and he obviously betrayed the MAGA movement. He sold them out to the left and to the right. And then when we have to keep in mind constantly who his daughter is, Ivanka. She's married to, well, outright, Mossad asset. So the guy is fully controlled and humiliated by basically Tel Aviv and Netanyahu. He is incapable of making any kind of serious movements geopolitically. But Russians do their thing. They give him bone here and there in order not completely kill him politically, because obviously Russia is not interested in downright or outright humiliation of him because of his narcissistic nature, impulsive, a man who cannot control his impulses really. And he is now in the corner from all points of view. He had the chance to change things. Remember? Oh, I will stop it in 24 hours. Then, a week, 2 weeks, a month, 100 days. So here we are. So, and in this case, how do you deal with the basically patient of the asylum? You have to have this restraining shirt on him, because if the United States collapses, it's going to be totally unlike if Europe collapses, which Europe is collapsing as we speak. It's really it's in progress in real time. Obviously, civilizations and countries, they do not collapse overnight. The like collapse of the Soviet Union was formalized overnight, okay, after the August coup. But it was disintegrating prior to it for a number of years, and the same goes for even larger entities like Western civilization. So Trump is incapable of saving it. He is incapable of saving the United States. He is merely a New York real estate shyster. And he is the showman from the Apprentice show. He doesn't possess, qualities of the statesman. And in this particular case, how do you do it? How you handle basically the asylum patient, and violent at that. So you have to do it very accurately, but in the same time in a very firm manner. And as I already stated, I'm on record, we repeated over and over again that the United States doesn't have cards to play unless it wants to escalate to the nuclear exchange, and then the United States ceases to exist together with the human civilization. Simple as that. Not many options. So